because we won't put our bend, our hose on top of each other. We'll offset our folds. Basically, it allows to have a cleaner look to it. Works its way down to one side, brings it back so it lays next to it, straight back, okay? The accordion load, once again, just as it looks, pictures do it the justice. That one you can actually see the offsets and the folds. The thing with both of these is, and we'll learn about it, is what we call a Dutchman. So, and we'll talk about that when it comes up time. The horseshoe load. It's a U-shaped, goes around the perimeter, works its way towards the center. Combination load, so it uses a split hose bed. Excuse me. The reverse horseshoe finish, obviously uses the horseshoe and then does the reverse on the top of it. Usually having an appliance attached to it on one end, and then our nozzle attached to it on the other end. High-rise packs.
We got a lot of those around here.
What's that?
We got a lot of those around here.
High-rise packs?
Mm-hmm.
They actually do exist on a truck in the county. Why, I don't know.
We-
Oh, that's right.
We have a couple.
You have a couple? Yeah. I can understand it here.
We have the tallest buildings in Rose Park in the whole county.
And we have, some of those condos have standpipes now.
Yeah, then they make sense.
Some of them don't. It's random.
Yep.
Walk up one and find nothing.
No
Walk back
standpipes.
down.
Right? So your high-rise packs, basically it's gonna be, 1 to 2 sections of 1 3/4, 1.5 inches. Gonna have a nozzle on one end or an appliance on the one end. Gonna carry tools with you, spanner wrenches, door wedges, stuff like that. So, one we pull out of the side of the truck, throw on our shoulder and huff it up a flight of steps, or 2 or 3, depending on how many we have. Yeah, any idea how many we have?
Steps?
High-rise packs.
There's 2 for sure on the aerial. I don't know if there's any on the pumper or not.
I don't think so. For sure.
I don't know if Spirit Lake's got any or not. Trying to think if they'd have a building that would be suitable for a high-rise pack. High-rise pack for us would work well at the condos at Bridges Bay.
And those are the ones that I know of that have standpipes.
Standpipes.
What about those condos?
Some of them
On
don't.
North Bay, wouldn't that be big enough? Those condos on the North Bay, in Westlake,
Mhm.
that's Spirit Lake, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, they have West Oaks as well.
Those ones that we were at for the person in the water, that ATV that went in the water.
Okoboji Island.
Yeah, those would be a good one, cause getting the aerial down there is gonna be a treat. So, yeah, they have their place.
It'd be easy to carry in if you needed an extension too,
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah, they're a lot easier than just trying to grab a hose roll, unless you're gonna use a donut roll, a self-carry donut roll. So, but those you'd only have, those would be specific for certain reasons, you wouldn't, that's not a hose roll that you're gonna do just to have,
Right.
so. Hose loading guidelines that we need to follow, check our gaskets or make sure they swivel before we make the connections to the next one. Keep the flat sides of the connected hose on the same plane. Tighten the couplings hand tight, we talked about that already. You know, remove any kinks or twists in the hose. If you've got a kink or a twist, then make sure that your swivels are working properly. They probably aren't, so. Use the Dutchman to position the hose coupling. Load your LDH couplings near the front. Don't pack them too tightly. Pre-connected hose loads, those are the hose loads that are already connected to your truck, usually right next to the, wow. I'm going back home. Pump panel. Longitudinal beds, they're in the raised trays, they're transverse beds, tailboard compartments, you can have them there. Side compartments or bins, that's usually the ones that are underneath the pump panel. From bumper wells, we have that on the aerial, probably on the pumper as well. Your reels, that's where you're looking at your grass trucks, stuff like that. Any wild landing, vehicles that you may have, So pre-connected flat load, it's adaptable for any size bed. So you just grab the nozzle in this case. See the loop here? That's actually done on purpose. Best way to describe it is, that first guy is gonna grab the nozzle. He's gonna start walking, and number two is gonna put an arm through the loop, and when he pulls, that entire section above it will all come out. And then the third guy, or your pump operator, or another helper, can grab that next loop down at the bottom, grab that, and pull it, and that'll take out the rest of it. Just remember when you're doing that all your hose ends up right next to the truck. Your triple layers. No. That's designed to be pulled by one person, so basically what happens is when your nozzle guy is gonna grab the nozzle, and when he pulls, you can see how it loops behind. It's gonna take that section and flop it over and take the rest of it out with it, and then when it catches that part of it and pulls again, it's gonna take everything here and pull it out as well. Once again, the problem with that is that all your hose ends up right next to the truck. The Minuteman load, the idea behind this one is that you can see where the nozzle's located. So that entire section of hose above it basically goes on the shoulder. You grab the nozzle, the hose goes on the shoulder, and as you start walking, it should flake off as you're walking. There's your hose reel. Like I said, that's normally stuff we use for ditch fires, grass fires, depending on the apparatus that you have it on. If you've got it on a pickup, it works great to do field fires with. If you've got it on a larger truck, say a tanker, or some pumpers have been that's been added to them, works great for ditch fires. There's actually, it's a newer version of the Minuteman load, that the way it works is the first guy on the attack line will grab it, and that flakes that. It's one section, one 50-foot section. So you can see how this has actually got the connection point into it. So you're talking probably almost 100 feet of hose that he might carry. So this new version of the Minuteman is, it takes a little bit of this one and adds it to that one. So that first section of 50 feet goes on the nozzleman's shoulder. Okay? He will take that to the door. When he gets to the door, what has happened is he's held onto it all the way. So as he's walking, it's unloading it from the truck as he's going. So it's giving a nice, even hose line to the door. Okay? Because once we get to the door, okay, on a normal load, we've been pulling hose and somebody's at the truck flaking it out, right? That's their job. Somebody's gotta get all that hose untangled so we don't have anything. So when we get to the door and we go to make entry, what are we doing? We're still pulling hose from the truck all the way in, right? So what this new version of the Minuteman is when we get to the door and we kneel down, we lay that hose down, and the second man can come up behind you and flake it right there at the door, so that when you make entry into the door, you're just pulling the flake at the door. Okay? So it can be charged, it doesn't get all messed up, it's nice and clean, and you have a nice easy hose to pull in the door instead of trying to pull it from the truck. Okay? I've seen it, but I've never got to use it, unfortunately, so. So booster lines are inappropriate for interior firefighting operations or for vehicle fires because they don't deliver a sufficient volume of water to protect firefighters in conditions suddenly deteriorate. Not enough water pressure, not enough water to flow. So supply hose lines, hose laying procedures will vary from the department to department. For obvious reasons, what works for us doesn't work for you. Okay? So we don't ever ride while standing on the apparatus is moving. You know, we don't get to go old school just because it's got a tailboard, doesn't mean we get to ride the tailboard. I know, right? Fun haters. I don't even think we have a truck in the county anymore that's got a tailboard to ride. Unless Terrell's got one, you know, they're 1922 pumper they got over there.
Hey, what happens there stays there.
When we're unloading, drive no faster than 10 miles an hour so the couplings can clear the tailboard without causing any damage both to the tailboard and the coupling. You know, deploy the hose to one side of the road so it's not driven over. And what it basically means is if you say one side of the road, the best way to do that is to get that hose to the curb. Okay? That way it ensures that it's not gonna get driven over. Sometimes you just can't help it. So this is called a forward lay. Why? No, it's not because the truck drove forward. Because it's going from where to where?
Water source to fire.
Water source to the fire.
Cause it's going forward,
Okay?
plain and simple.
Yep. So it's going from the hydrant to the scene. That's a forward lay. Reverse lay is when it's going from the fire location to the hydrant. And when do we usually use this? When we're trying to boost the hydrant pressure. A lot of times we'll use this when we do what we call relay pumping. Basically the first truck in, we'll drop a supply line at the scene, and they will go to a good hydrant. And then the second truck will come in, possibly from the same direction, and just stop at the scene, and they're gonna hook to the supply line. The first pumper that came in hooks to the hydrant, and then they're gonna boost the hydrant pressure to push it to, see, that's exactly why I do it. They're gonna boost that pressure from the hydrant to get it to the truck. Especially important when we're dealing with long hose lays. You know, you're dealing with a block and a half lay where you need to get hydrant pressure there, maybe dealing with a weaker hydrant. When you're doing a reverse lay, especially in a relay pumping scenario, and you have two pumpers, one can pump 1,500 gallons a minute, one can pump 1,200 gallons a minute. Which truck is which? Which truck goes to the hydrant, the 15 or the 12?
12.
Why?
Cause your intakes don't need to be at high pressure.
No.
Cause you don't want a bigger, more GPM feeding a
Smaller pumps.
smaller GPM
'Cause
truck.
that supply truck doesn't have to pump very high pressure.
Correct. However, you just turned a 1,500 GPM truck to a 1,200 GPM truck. because it can only pump what it gets. Okay? If you put the 15 at the hydrant, then it can pump and use the second truck as a valve. Okay? Aerial operations. Okay? You put, the pumper pumps to the aerial. Okay? If the pumper's running full bore at 1,500 gallons a minute, does the pumper in the aerial even have to do any work? Or is he just a valve? He's just a valve. Okay, here's the other problem. If I'm pumping at 1,200 and I'm screaming here at 1,200 GPM and I'm pushing it to here and I want more at the 1,500, I think I can take more, right? What happens to this pump? You cavitate it.
Yeah.
Okay, here's where the scenario in lied. We went to Lake Park, took the elevator down. I was running a 1,000 gallon a minute pumper. It was an old pumper. I'm running a 1,000 gallon a minute pumper, drafting. Okay, I'm screaming on 1,000 gallons a minute, pumping to an aerial. That aerial wanted more water. Every time he overmaxed me, he cavitated my pump, shut me down. If I'm down, he's down. We'd have to reset the system, start me back up, and go to him. I had no idea what was happening. I was trying to figure out what I was doing wrong. Every time I'm just sitting there screaming, and I'm getting my valves set and getting my levers done where I wanted it, because I'm sending water to an aerial, I'm sending water to a 2.5 on a deck gun, you know, because the idea on a grain bin is trying to get it to collapse in itself. Well, if I can't keep that side cool because I keep losing water, I kept trying and kept trying. I had my chief come up, he tried it, he cavitated. We couldn't figure out what we were doing. Well, then we looked up and the pump operator on the aerial, we watched him one time and pretty soon we saw him do this. He was increasing his pressure, and as soon as he got to a certain point, cavitated my pump. So, I get your idea that you can only pump so much, but you want the bigger pump as the relay pumper. It pushes it to the other one, that way you don't ever over pull from what you've got going on.
When you collapse your intake hose too.
Yeah, you basically it's like sucking through a straw,
Right.
you know, a soft straw. You suck too hard, it just collapses everything, and you can't do anything about it, so. Cause you're trying to pull more out of it than you're getting. So, and that's what happens, is it collapses everything, and
So what I've noticed at the scene is when you get there, you don't have a lot of choice on where truck is going where. I mean, they're already set.
no, it's, if you're gonna do a reverse lay,
Things are set already.
yeah, if you're doing that, it's planned ahead.
Mhm.
You know, so, case in point, and I'm sorry, I don't have enough knowledge up here yet, I have enough down there. If the school was on fire, confirmed structure fire at the school, they would go to the Methodist church corner, and that is 8th, okay? Cause 8th Street goes clear through and gets to the high school. That hydrant on 8th and the highway is one of the best hydrants in town. They would lay a run of LDH on the old pumper, would go all the way to the school. The new pumper would stop at the hydrant to push it to the school. That's already pre-planned. They know in that scenario, that's what they have to do.
Mhm.
That's not something that you're just gonna do.
Right. Like at the grain fire, you had no control over where.
No, because we were all just set, it was just
Right.
something that we were doing.
So that pump operator should have been watching his intake pressure too.
Right.
As soon as it started to drop, he
Yes.
has to back off.
Exactly. Not Mill Creek, the restaurant next to the Ritz that they didn't rebuild. Which one was that?
Mineral City.
Mineral City. When Mineral City burned, when I came in, we had hit all the hydrants in that system. I hit the hydrant up by Miles. And tried to pull a line all the way from Miles, all the way to Mineral City. Okay? I literally pulled into the condo driveway and I ran out of hose. Okay? That's a lot of LDH to put away, just so you wanna know, so, But that's the same idea. We did a forward lay in that one. In theory, we should have reverse laid that one and let somebody pull it off of the hydrant and push it down
But
to
your,
the
tr-
city.
your truck has to be set up for the reverse lay, right? It has to be,
You're doing it off of Stewart's connections, off of LDH.
okay.
Remember, they're sexless connections, so it doesn't, that's the only way this works.
Like this picture though, of course. has
Yeah,
the
they've got the
nozzles.
nozzle there.
Yeah.
The only way that a reverse lay works is it's done with Stewart's connections. So you're able to go either way, and it doesn't matter, because that truck coming in is gonna be able to hook up just the same as you were. So, if you're gonna do it with 2.5, you have, you have to have that set up that
Right.
this 2.5 is for attack, this 2.5 is for supply. Okay, if you're gonna pull as a supply line, then you would have to lay it on a forward lay, because it wants to connect to the hydrant first and then go to the fire. If you were gonna do a
You could
reverse
do-
lay on it,
You could
you could
do
put an adapter
two
into it.
adapters on it.
Right, you could put two adapters on it. However, if you were gonna do a reverse lay on a 2.5, pull the attack line. Because the attack line's set up to do the connection, and you pull it to the hydrant, and then you can go.
Why would, in a situation like that, why wouldn't you just, why wouldn't you have that one pump and drop a tank and just pump into a tank?
You could, and that's where you would, that's another one of those, you plan that ahead. So basically, Tara, hate to pick on them, but makes it easy. Okay, in Terrell, you cannot pump off a hydrant. Okay,
Hartley, you really can't.
Hartley's about the same
Okay.
way.
In the middle of town here, the the water guy is on the Sanborn Fire Department. If we call for mutual aid, he's usually really pissed when we're in town.
yeah, so, well, here's the case scenario over there, we got called over there. And once again, I'm sorry, I hate to do this, and it's a pet peeve of mine, but it's the only experience I have. I've been on like 2 fires with these guys. We got called to Terrell for a house fire. Okay, needed a water supply. Okay, I was second pumper coming in. First pumper went to the house, it was just outside of town. I came in as a second pumper because they were using porta tanks. I got told, as I'm coming to town, this is the hydrant you're going to use. Literally, I pulled up to the hydrant and the water tower's right here. I can see the water tower and I'm across the street.
How the hydrant work for you?
I had to connect to the hydrant, dump it into a porta tank, and when a truck showed up, pull it out of the porta tank and put it in their truck.
Sounds like a pain in the ass.
Because if I hooked to their hydrant, as soon as I pulled pressure off of it, I was gonna collapse the system.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where you have to know what you're gonna do before you can do it.
Yeah, we have stuff like that too. I mean, we try not to, if we had a big house fire in the middle of town, we'd collapse the system.
Yeah.
We'd have to have multiple tanks. And
Yeah.
Our best hydrants or our best fire hydrants are out by the water tower is probably it's literally right under the water tower.
Yeah,
And it's a newer hydrant.
it's a newer hydrant, yeah. So basically your plan would be is that when you pull up to a house fire, is you're dropping porta tanks
Right.
and so your first due truck is your engine, your second due truck is your tanker. In town, which is scary if you think about it, The difference is though, and I will tell you from experience, that Sioux City Fire Rescue, Sioux Falls Fire Rescue, some of them bigger ones, if they watch how rural guys have to do that, they are amazed to see how fast a porta tank can come off a truck, set up and fill it with water and be pulling water out of it. Okay? Milford has a gentleman who is now on Sioux City Fire Rescue, who was in town and watched it happen. And at the end of it, went up to the department and told them, I have never seen a porta tank set up and pull water off of that fast. Cause they don't do that in the big town. They do, that's something we have to do in Terrell, in Hartley, in Armstrong, I'm sure we have hydrants in APO that you pull up and you go, no, no.
Try to pull the cap off and the hydrant falls over.
No, that was Spirit Lake.
That's good, like,
That was Spirit Lake. And it wasn't that, they hooked that hydrant and they started to drive away, and as they drove away, the hydrant went this way. Okay?
we opened one up and didn't have any water. That was just this winter.
Yep.
Or last,
Well,
it was last year, last summer.
even in Spirit Lake, when we were running that one, I came up, so they paid for mutual aid to hit a second hydrant. And I hit the one at the corner of the hospital and 23rd Street. And when I hit that one, I put a connection on one side and an appliance on the other. And I always make sure that everything opens. And I couldn't get one of I couldn't get one of the caps to even come off. Every time I cranked on it, you watch that hydrant do this. And I'm like, it's all I got, you know, but I was set up that I was gonna do a reverse lay. I was gonna do a forward lay from that hydrant to them. I don't know if I would've made it. I don't know where they were set up in the parking lot, but that was the plan. So, combination lay, 2 lines laid forward, 2 lines laid reverse, or a forward lay followed by a reverse lay. So, I don't know why, but you go hydrant to scene, turn around and come back, or the other way around. It's a combination of multiple lines going one way or the other, or both.
Why would you need that?
I don't know. It's never been anything I've even ever seen, heard, had the thought of doing, you know.
I mean, pump, why would you want water going from the pump to the scene?
Yeah, and then coming back, I don't know. No idea.
You're already hooked to a hydrant.
Yeah. Didn't say anything in the. The section of it's on 861. It doesn't really even tell you. Yeah, I really have no idea why it would cross your mind to wanna do that, so.
Would that be on separate parts of the bed?
Could be, but the way they're talking about it is just, they're even talking about using hose adapters and, you know, crossovers and everything else. Yeah, I wouldn't even know.
Hmm.
So, we talked a little bit about, and I just said it again, about using hose adapters. And I've talked before about slowing your mind down and thinking about what's going on. Funny story. We did a house fire where we were running out of, we only had one hydrant to pull off of the street we were on. But if you went to the backyard and you went down the hill through the grass, there was a dead end street that had a hydrant sitting down there. And we were gonna put a pumper down there to do the same thing, to pump it all up the hill, and then put a Y up there at the top of the hill, and then put a couple hand lines so we could do some attack from the backside of it. They laid 200 feet, I think it was, of 2.5. And when they got it laid, they went to hook it to the truck and realized that they had laid it backwards.
Oh, no.
What I said, slow your mind down. I laid this backwards. I have the male end pointing to the truck. I have the female end pointing to the house. Okay? My mind slowed down says what? Put an adapter on this end, put an adapter on that end. No. They grabbed the male end, huffed back up the hill, set it down next to the female end, grabbed the female end and huffed it back down the hill. So they laid 400 feet of hose because they didn't just stop and say, oops, how can I fix it? It would have taken a quick connection here, walk up, you're walking up anyway, quick connection here, you're good to go. So, different methods for handling hose lines. Flat load, Minuteman load, triple layer load, we talked about those just a little bit. Supply hose is used as an attack line, that's usually in the 2.5 to 3 inch. Anything over that we don't use, it's only strictly as a supply line, we don't use it as an attack line. Sometimes we have to equip them with Y appliances so that we can take a 2.5 or 3 inch, put a Y on it, convert it down to inch and a half, so we've got 2 1/2 inches that come off, or 1 3/4. So, and individual sections from flat or accordion or horseshoe loads as well. Advancing hose lines. So here's two guys that are huffing around on a 2.5 or 3 inch. Notice they got the hose straps. So they're not working as hard. You look at the guy on the nozzle, using the pistol grip. Got it close to his body. Bail's just starting to open up, so he's starting to get some pressure pulled back. Say how that second guy's got that hose strap around his shoulder, and he's starting to get that lean in. He's starting to lean a little forward. He's starting to take that weight off of him, off of the first guy. So as you start flowing more water out of that nozzle, the more that hose wants to work its way backwards, so you have to, using physics, work against it. Be alert for potential dangers when advancing hose line into a structure. Always head on a swivel, especially that two-man. Two-man's always got his head on a swivel, always looking, always looking, always looking. First guy, the more experience you get, the more you can get that head on a swivel. But mainly that first guy's job is to do what?
Put the wet stuff on the red stuff.
Wet stuff on the red stuff. And if you can't see the red stuff, listen. Listen for it. Listen for the pops, the crackles. Okay? You can't see it, you can hear it. Just keep going until it gets louder. At some point in time, you will be able to see it. Guidelines, safety things that we need to worry about, removing the kinks and bends while we're advancing the hose line. That's gonna be that third man, maybe some other guys that are standing around, getting that hose flaked out. Before we make entry into any structure, anytime we're using the hose, we wanna make sure we get that air out. So, once that line's been charged, first thing we wanna do is, the first few things we wanna do is, obviously we wanna get the air out. So we're gonna open the bail, nice and slow, get that air to bleed out. What's the second part that's gonna occur when we're doing that? We're opening that bail, the air is coming out, now we're getting water flow. What do we need to see? The pattern, okay? What pattern is coming out of my nozzle this time? Okay, do I have a nice big fog pattern, or am I in a nice tight straight stream, or am I at my 30-35 degree nozzle pattern? Whatever your SOPs distinguish that you need to do to attack, if you're gonna make entry, that's where we wanna make sure that nozzle is at. Because you weren't the last one to use it, so you don't know where it's at, okay? Entire team's on one side of the hose line. That way the hose isn't having to S-curve through everybody. Okay? Check for the heat before we open the door, so when we get to the door, not using the bare skin but a gloved hand, just make a good sweep up and down, feel, okay? Stay low if need be, to avoid blocking any ventilation that we may have going on through the front door, okay? And chalk those self-closing doors, either using wedges or some type of tool that you may have, whether it's on your person Some people put wedges in their helmets, you know, something to keep them self-closing doors open so that they don't close on your hose. Cause then that just impedes your hose. Yeah, it keeps the door open, but as you're trying to pull, it does multiple things. It putting pressure on your hose, so you're having to pull harder, and it's putting sharp points on that hose for it to rub against. Okay? Advancing the hose line up and down a stairwell can be very difficult, so in order to make it a little easier, in this case, we're in probably what looks like to be about a 4-story building. We leave one guy down here to help what we call hump hose up. But 1 and 2 pumped it all the way up to 4, made a loop and dropped it down so that as they advance, it pulls it from the top and brings it down, makes it easier for them. And then this guy at the bottom can pump hose as need be when they start using up what they've already used as their excess. Notice how it says we put the hose against the outside of the stairwell. That way it avoids being a trip hazard. We will show you when it comes into working in the trailers and stuff like that, that it actually serves a purpose. My daughter's not here to make fun of me, so we can do this. So on the trailer, on the 2nd story, it's kind of blocked off like this. There's a rail here with steps going down steps, and this is the door. So the door's been swung wide open. So first crew will come in and they make entry to come down the steps. Okay? So it's usually a 3-man crew. So 1 and 2 are gonna go down the steps initially. The 3rd man stays at the top so that the hose doesn't rub here. But then the backup crew is here at the door. Okay? And this works at any point in time that you're making entry into a house. You should always have somebody at the door to help what we call hump hose. Okay? The hose naturally, as they come down, the hose naturally wants to do this. Right? That's its natural progression. It wants to wrap around that corner. So we know that we have a bad point here where it's going to slow down progression of the hose. Okay? So what this guy here does is he's going to run this hose out here and makes a big loop here so that it comes with this guy to run it down the steps. Okay? Does multiple things. I'm avoiding rub contact here. Okay? I know as this team progresses forward, what's this loop gonna do? Where's it gonna go? It's gonna suck in, right? I can see that. Do they know it down here? They can't feel it. All they feel is their advancing hose. That sucks in. What do I do at the door? I give them more. Okay? If you keep it just off the wall, when they start to push back, what's that hose do? It pushes to the wall. I can pull it away from it. Okay? This is that vantage point that I can see. Works the same as in a house. You make entry into a house and make it into the front door, keep that loop in there. Okay? As that loop moves one way or the other, you know what the team's doing. They're not working overexerting anything because of the hose movement. You're making it easier on them. Right? Where if you just let it run this way, they're constantly fighting it to come around the corner. Right? My artwork got by without being made fun of. Good for me.
That's pretty simple.
Standpipes, easiest with pre-assembled hose. This is where those high-rise packs come into play. Okay. We don't have to really worry about running them up the stairwell and making the loop. Okay. Basically, what happens here is everybody understand what a standpipe is, even if you don't have them. Okay. Otherwise, I can explain it to you real quick. Improvised standpipes. Basically, you just, if you have the ability up the stairwell, just take a hose, Run it straight up, tie it off on its way up, you just made yourself your own standpipe, so.
And a lot of times those standpipes are charged by the truck outside, right?
Yeah, that's what that, so you've
There's a
got,
hookup on the outside.
the fire department hookups on the outside serve two purposes. Purpose one is for the standpipe, purpose two is to give extra oomph to any system that's already going on in the inside. If we do an improvised standpipe, there's gotta be a delay in applying the water to the fire. Just because we have to get that standpipe to be put up and tied off properly. So if you're gonna do one, you gotta plan for it. Showing different methods. Basically this is doing it from the outside. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th story. Basically you just best way to do this is go up top, drop a rope down, cause we all know how to tie knots. Cause every time I come in here, everybody's tying knots. Tie the knot off under the hose, pull it up, tie it off halfway up. That's on an exterior. Advancing the hose up a ladder is easier and safer when it's an uncharged line. So you just, obviously with it's flaked up, you can see the guys just have it right over their shoulder. Really easy to climb the steps with it. Charge line on the other hand, very difficult. Notice he's got a leg lock going on up here. So as he's pulling it up, it doesn't pull him off. Especially if he was going to charge that line. You wanna be leg locked in and make sure that somebody's heeling the ladder. Don't exceed the weighted rate capacity of the ladder. If the hose cannot be passed up the ladder without exceeding the low limit, it should be hoisted up. Well, knowing my fat belly, I don't think I could take a hose up with me. Operate a hose line from a ladder position. Make sure that it's your leg locked in or ladder belt is in place and that somebody is heeling the ladder at the bottom. One firefighter, two firefighter, different methods that we can use. I will tell you in the two-person method that he is holding that hose wrong. He is using what we call a pistol grip handle. Notice he's got that pistol grip tucked into his, fairly close to his body. The one firefighter method, he's got a good stance to him, he's got that hose somewhat out in front of him. No pistol grip, so it's all in the hose. I will show you, when we get out there, I'll show you the proper way to hold an 1.5 inches. Probably goes against everything that you probably learned up until this point. Basically, we call it the shotgun method, okay? I will tell you also, this guy is working harder or easier than this guy. Who's gonna do more work?
Guy behind.
Guy behind.
Guy behind, okay? If, at the end of a fire, even a car fire, if he's more tired than he is, he didn't do his job. Okay? The number two guy, his job is to take all of that water pressure weight off of number one. So number one, all he has to do is do what? Aim. It's his job, is just to aim, okay? One firefighter method on the curl, on the Q, usually this is on a 2.5 attack line. I think I talked about this, didn't I, with my hotel fire? Or my apartment complex fire in Spirit Lake. That's the attack I was talking about. See how he's got it curled around? It goes under the hose, and he's got just enough to get it out in front of him, and he's sitting on it. He has complete control of a 2.5. If that thing's running full bore, he can sit there and just aim it. If that thing was a straight line, it could take 3 to 4 guys to hold that same hose. Or if you've got 2 guys using straps. Extending a section of hose may be necessary during operations. That's where we're gonna use our hose clamps, spanner wrenches, hose rolls or bundles. Safest method that we can do is to obviously close the valve, stop the water flow, apply the hose clamp if we need to, or put a kink in the hose if possible. The only way you're putting a kink in a hose is if there's no pressure to it really at all, maybe some hydrant pressure. Basically, you just pick up one end of it, up off the ground, step on the hose, and then fold it down on itself and kink it out. The hose clamp, or what do we call it, the hoo-ha breaker, that's where you use that. That's used on an 1 3/4, 2.5, or if you're gonna use the one that's got the spin on it, use that on a 5-inch. You will probably clamp off a 5-inch more than you'd clamp off an attack line. If you needed to add more supply line, then it's easier to clamp it off than it is to go all the way down and shut off a hydrant, because that hydrant may be used for something else. You know, most times when you hook a hydrant, you've got 2 connections, one that you're pulling yourself off of, one that if somebody else was to need to use. So you should always put a hose on it and an appliance on the other side so that it can be used for something else. The thing to remember though is that if you need to add supply line and you don't have a clamp, you're gonna have to shut the hydrant down completely. Replacing the burst section of hose line. Request the pump operator to close that discharge section, stop it at a gated Y, or apply a hose clamp or kink it. The key is, if you have one bad section come out, 2 sections go in. Why? Just because it's supposed to be a 50-foot hose does not mean it truly is. You may be replacing a 50-foot hose section, but the one section you put in place of it might only be 48 foot. So whenever we replace one, we always use 2. Okay? Anytime, whether it's 1.5 inches, 1 3/4, 2.5. If one goes down, we put 2 in place of it. Alright. Let's pull out